5 Odd Star Trek. The original series details you only notice when watching the first few episodes. Star Trek, the original series, went through several changes during its earliest episodes as the characters and their world were still being established. Captain James T. Kirk, William Shatner, Spock Leonard Nimoy, and Dr. Leonard McCoy DeForest Kelley eventually became one of science fiction's most famous trios, but Star Trek almost featured an entirely different cast of characters. Star Trek's original pilot, The Cage, centered on Captain Christopher Pike Jeffrey Hunter, with Spock the only character who made it into the final version of TOS. After NBC requested a second pilot episode of Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry and his team made Where No Man Has Gone Before. Despite being pitched as the first episode of the series, this episode actually aired third, resulting in some confusing changes among the characters and their uniforms. While watching the first few episodes of Star Trek, the original series Season 1, it's clear that the show's creators were still working out some of the details. It didn't help that the episodes were not aired in the order in which they were produced. Grace Lee Whitney's yeoman Janice Rand only appeared in 8 episodes of Star Trek, the original series, but she was initially meant to play a much larger role in the series. Rand even appeared alongside Kirk and Spock in some of the original promotional material for Star Trek before the show premiered. Although the episodes in which Rand appeared aired out of order, several of them hint at the larger role she was originally meant to play. Episodes like The Enemy Within and The Naked Time tease romantic feelings between Rand and Kirk, acknowledging that Kirk's position as captain prevented him from acting on them. Unfortunately, this storyline contributed to Rand being written off of the show, as NBC reportedly wanted Kirk to have numerous romances with different guest stars. Actress Grace Lee Whitney was also horrifically assaulted by an unnamed executive, which she believes contributed to her firing. Several of the inconsistencies in Star Trek, the original series Season 1, appear in Where No Man Has Gone Before, as it was originally shot as the pilot episode. Not only were the uniforms a different style, but Spock and Chief Engineer Scotty James Doohan both wore Gold Command Star Trek uniforms rather than the blue and red they would wear for most of the series. LT Hikaru Sulu George Takei wears a blue uniform in Where No Man Has Gone Before and serves as a science officer. He would later switch to a Gold Command uniform and take over the position as helmsman for most of the series. When you think of Star Trek, the original series TOS, you probably picture Captain Kirk sitting confidently in the captain's chair, Spock raising an eyebrow with impeccable logic, and the crew of the Enterprise boldly going where no one has gone before. But if you sit down to watch the first few episodes with fresh eyes, or even a seasoned fan's nostalgia, you'll quickly notice that the earliest adventures of the USS Enterprise are a little weird. Before the series settled into the cultural juggernaut we know today, the early episodes had quirks, inconsistencies, and production choices that feel downright bizarre when compared to the rest of the series. Here are 5 odd details you'll only catch if you revisit those opening voyages. 1. Spock has emotions and isn't afraid to show them. If your mental image of Spock is a calm, collected half-Vulcan who never smiles, prepare for some whiplash. In the early episodes, especially The Cage, the original unaired pilot, and Where No Man Has Gone Before, Spock is surprisingly expressive. He grins. He yells. He even gets excited about things. It's disorienting. This isn't just a misfire on Leonard Nimoy's part. At the time, Spock's character hadn't been fully fleshed out, and the logic over emotion concept was still evolving. In The Cage, which featured Captain Christopher Pike instead of Kirk, Spock's persona was more alien in appearance, but not yet emotionally restrained. Ironically, it was Gene Roddenberry's wife, Majel Barrett, who played number 1 in that pilot, who was originally intended to be the emotionless character, but when the network balked at her role, Roddenberry transferred those traits to Spock. So if early Spock seems like he's been taking acting cues from Dr. McCoy, it's because he hadn't become the iconic Vulcan we all know yet. He was still figuring it out, smile by smile. 2. The uniform colors don't match what you remember. Classic Trek uniforms are as iconic as the Enterprise itself. Gold for command, blue for science, red for operations. But in the earliest episodes, this color coding system wasn't quite locked in. Take Captain Kirk's tunic in Where No Man Has Gone Before. Is it gold? Well, not really. It's more of a greenish lime shade that shifts depending on lighting and camera quality. That's because the fabric they used had a weird reflective quality that looked different on camera than in person. It wasn't until later in Season 1 that the standard colors were finalized and stabilized. Also, some background characters wear uniforms that don't seem to follow any obvious logic, random beiges and tans, almost like the crew was dressing out of a communal laundry basket. Watching the first few episodes feels like tuning into an alternate version of the show, one where Starfleet's dress code was whatever looks vaguely futuristic. 3. Uhura isn't on the bridge yet. You might expect Lieutenant Uhura to be a fixture of the bridge from the very beginning, boldly hailing Klingons and reminding Kirk that she's more than capable of rerouting communications. But surprisingly, Uhura doesn't appear until the episode The Man Trap, and even then, she's not in red. She's in a gold uniform and positioned at the navigation station. In fact, it takes several episodes for the crew we know and love to fully assemble in their familiar roles. Sulu, too, begins as a science officer rather than a helmsman. It's like watching the Star Trek universe slowly snap into focus. For fans used to the tight ensemble dynamic of the later series, the early episodes feel like a reshuffling game of musical chairs. Uhura's initial absence highlights a broader point. TOS took time to find its groove. The show's progressiveness was already light years ahead of its time, but even pioneers take a few steps before settling into their stride. 4. The Enterprise bridge looks strangely low-tech. We've seen the bridge of the Enterprise recreated and reimagined countless times across the Star Trek universe, from The Next Generation to Strange New Worlds. But go back to the first episodes of TOS, and the bridge has an oddly utilitarian, almost thrown-together feel. Blinking colored lights? Check. Random plastic buttons? Double check. Some of the control panels look like they were cobbled together with spare parts from a Radio Shack clearance bin. Of course, this was 1960s television, and budgets were tight. But what really stands out is how quiet and static the bridge feels. The background hum of the ship, the visual screens, the swooping camera movements, they all come later. At first, the bridge feels less like the command center of a Galaxy-class starship and more like a makeshift set where everyone is trying really hard not to bump into the furniture. This low-fi aesthetic actually adds charm in hindsight. It's a visual reminder of how far the show, and sci-fi television in general, has come. And yet, despite the blinking Christmas lights and cardboard consoles, the spirit of the show shines through. 5. Kirk is surprisingly normal. We know Captain James T. Kirk as the womanizing, alien-fighting, diplomacy-defying hero of the Federation. But early on, he's a lot more subdued. In Where No Man Has Gone Before, he's academic, even introspective. He debates philosophy with Spock, mourns the fate of a friend turned godlike adversary, and doesn't even hit on a single crew member. William Shatner's performance hasn't yet blossomed into the full dramatic flair we later associate with Kirk. There's less dramatic pausing, less of that distinctive,